Thank you very much for joining us this morning. My name is Maria Osorio, and I'm going to be sharing with you today a short workshop regarding the Toefl Ibt, specifically the reading section. So my name is Maria Osorio. Like I said, I'm a Junior Education USA advisor here in El Salvador. For those of you who may not be familiarized with what we do, we are Education USA. We are part of the Department of State of the United States, and we are the official source of information for studies in the United States. This morning, I'm going to focus on what the Toefl Ibt is, what sections it contains. We are going to talk a little about the reading section, what characteristics you might expect to find, and we are going to take a closer look to the types of questions that you are going to encounter in the reading section. If at any point while I am speaking, you have a question, please feel free to ask it in our chat box. So let's talk about the Toefl Ibt. This is a test that measures your ability to use and understand English at a university level. And it evaluates how well you combine your reading, listening, speaking, and writing skills to perform academic tasks. So this is a test that measures your proficiency. Most of the universities in the United States will require for you to have some sort of proof of your proficiency in English to make sure that you are not pulled back because of your English skills. So they kind of want to see that you are at a similar level speaking about the language as your native speakers peers, right? So that's the objective of the test. Now, if you are interested in studying in the United States, you would need to do some research to see what the requirements of the university that you are interested in are, because they might have different scores that you need to attain in order to be able to be accepted at the university. The universities that I have seen, they are asking for about 80 points in the test. The most that you can get is 120 points. But like I said, in that case, you would really need to find out what the university that you are looking for is asking for. So the test, like I said before, has 4 sections, so it measures 4 of your skills. The reading, listening, speaking, and writing. I'm going to tell you a little bit about each part before we jump into the reading section. So for the reading, you get either 3 or 4 passages, and you get 10 questions each. The time is going to depend on how many reading passages you get. So you have 54 minutes if you get only 3 passages, and 72 minutes if you get 4. The same happens with the lectures, in which you might either have 3 or 4 lectures and 2 or 3 conversations, and depending on how many you get, that's the time that you will get. So either 41 or 57 minutes as a limit. What does that depend on? In both reading and listening, it's a matter of luck. Why do you get an extra one? ETS, the company that creates the test, starts testing new material. And so they might randomly choose you in order to test something new. If that is the case, you get an extra reading or lecture or conversation, and that does not count towards your score. However, you do not know which of your readings or which of your lectures or which of your conversations does not count. So you still need to do your best to do well in all of them. For those of you who might be familiarized with the test, you might have noticed that the time is shorter than it used to be. About a year ago, probably a little less than that, there were some changes to the test and they made it shorter. And that is also reflected in the speaking part. It used to be 6 speaking tasks that you had to complete. However, nowadays you only have to complete 4. The writing has stayed the same. You still have 2 tasks that you need to complete. And for both speaking and writing, you get an independent task and integrated task. So independent basically means that they ask you a prompt, a question about a topic that you are familiar with, and you just talk or write about it. And for the integrated tasks, you get a text, an audio, and then you have to combine the information to write down or say a response. Like I said, you get 120 points in total, so each of the sections is worth 30 points. Let's see about the reading section now more specifically. So the reading section measures your ability to understand university level academic texts and passages. In many academic settings around the world, students are expected to read and understand information from textbooks and other academic materials written in English. The objective of the test, like I said before, is for you to be able to prove your proficiency, but not just your proficiency of English in general, but your proficiency in academic context. Why? Because universities want to see that you will be able to participate in your teacher's lectures, do your assignments, participate in college life as well. So the reading section is going to, well, the test in general is going to contain vocabulary that you would be expected to use or to know before you get to the university. Let's go back to looking at the characteristics of the reading section. Like I said, it's going to be either 3 or 4 reading passages with 10 questions each, and you have the time there. Now, when you start the test, when you start the reading section, and this is actually the first part of the test, you are going to notice that there is a clock. And so the timer is going to be running. And from the moment that you start the reading, you are going to see either 54 or 72 minutes, right? That way you're going to know how many readings you are going to get. You really need to be careful on organizing your time, because if you notice, you should be spending about 18 minutes on each reading. And if you're not careful and if you take too long, you might spend half of that time in one of the readings, which would be really detrimental to your score. So you really need to practice reading and practice on your speed so that you can start measuring yourself in order not to take more than 18 minutes on each of the readings. Or if you go past those 18 minutes, to make sure that you spend a shorter amount of time in the other two, right? So you really need to be able to organize your time enough not to spend too much time in one text only. For the reading passages, they are all university level textbooks that introduce a discipline or topic. These disciplines or topics come from a variety of different topics and or subjects. You can get a reading about astronomy, about biology, about mathematics. So it's going to really vary what type of text you are going to get. And again, that is a matter of luck, right? The excerpts that they are taken, they are changed as little as possible so that the TOEFL IBT can measure your ability to read academic material as faithfully as possible. If you guys have learned English at an academy or at school, you might have noticed that your readings get more complicated as your level goes up. And that means that the readings are graded. They are adjusted to the level that you are in. In the case of the TOEFL texts, they are changed as little as possible, if at all, in order for them to actually see that you can read authentic material. And now, something that you need to keep in mind, like I said before, is that you're going to have topics from any class that you would get in a first year class at the university. However, you should not be concerned if you are unfamiliar with the topic. Of course, you cannot know everything, and there might be a text that you are not familiarized with. Now, all the passages have the information that you need in order to answer the questions. It doesn't mean that you need to know about astronomy, that you need to know about physics or biology. However, it does help if you know a little bit about the topic, right? So in my case, for example, I have a tendency to read more about the humanities, arts, history. So when I get texts like those in the TOEFL, it becomes a little bit easier for me because I am familiarized with it than if you give me a text about physics or mathematics. However, like I said, all the information is in the text, but the more you read a variety of different texts, the more confident you will feel when you are taking the test and you are reading a passage that you might already be familiar with. Let's talk about the formats of the questions that you are going to encounter in the test. There are three basic format questions that you are going to see. The most common by far is the question with 4 choices and a single answer in a traditional multiple choice format. That one looks like this one, right? You get the text on one side, then you get the question and the 4 possible answers, and you have to choose the one that you feel is closest in meaning. If there is something that is specifically in one paragraph, they are going to mark it for you, as you can see there on the image. If it comes from the whole text, then you're not going to see an arrow. However, this is what it looks like. And by far, this is the most common question or format of questions that you are going to get. This can include vocabulary questions, asking you about specific information from the text, asking for inferences, asking for exceptions. So you do have to be pretty familiarized with the text before answering the questions. Another question format that you might get is where you get 4 choices and 1 single answer in the format of insert a sentence. And that one looks like this. So you get the text, you're going to see a paragraph that is shown to you like that. You're going to see that they give you 4 squares. And basically what you need to do is to read the sentence that you are given and choose the best place where that sentence would go. This question, you will only find one of them in each of the texts. And that's basically what you need to do on that one. And finally, you get a reading to learn question, which is basically a summary like this one. So you get more choices and you have to select more than one. If you notice, this question is worth 2 points. That is the only question that you get that is actually worth 2 points. And you find one of 2 different questions. Either this one, which is a summary question, in which you have to select the main idea. So you have to learn to discriminate between details and main ideas, or category questions, where you get another chart with different categories and you have to organize the information. So those are the type of questions that you get in the reading section of the TOEFL test. Now, let's take a closer look to the questions that you get. So let's look at the first one that you have here. So before I show this to you, I would like you to either open the chat if you don't have it open, and I'm going to have my stopwatch here. And I'm going to give you 2 minutes for you to read a text. It's going to be just a short paragraph, a question, and 4 choices. And in 2 minutes or less, I would like you to answer the question. So if you notice here, you don't have A, B, C, or D, but I would like you to take a look at it. I'm going to put my timer now. And when you have an answer, I would like you to share it with us in the chat. So 2 minutes, go. 1 minute. We've got 30 seconds. Let's see if anybody wants to share with us what they think the answer is. Five seconds. All right, let's see what we think. Last one, they say. Last one, letter D, letter B, last one. Very good. It is the last one, yes. So for this type of question, something that you need to practice on is trying to find information as quickly as possible. Very good. It is letter D. Sorry. There we go. So some tips that you need to keep in mind for this type of question is that you need to practice scanning in order to find and highlight key facts and information, or in this case, information that is actually not there. The best recommendation that I can give you is to practice scanning as quickly as or as often as possible in order to increase reading rate and fluency. I've taught TOEFL courses for a couple of years now, and one of the main concerns that I see with my students is that because they are not used to reading, they tend to be pretty slow. So the more that you can practice, not just the understanding, but the speed of your reading, the better off you will be. So definitely practice that. Let's try with another one. So 2 minutes, same thing. See if you can share with us your answer on the chat. One minute. Thirty seconds. Ten. Okay, from what I'm seeing here in the chat, we are all in agreement that it is letter C. Very good. So if you notice in the text, right on the second line, it says that the candle industry made lighting available to all, right? So what can we infer from that? That before that, they were not available to all. Now, the tips that I can share with you for this part, there we go. The most important tip is for you to increase your vocabulary knowledge. make sure that you practice with flashcards. Any new words that you find, try to keep a log for you to be able to start increasing your vocabulary. This is useful for every part of the TOEFL test. And like I said, they're going to be academic language, so it might not be the language that you are used to using with your friends or even in classes. So it would be a good idea for you to start thinking about that. There is a website called Quizlet, Quizlet. And that might help you in terms for you to have some flashcards to look at. They have from different categories for different levels. So that's a good website for you to start practicing your vocabulary. Another thing to keep in mind is that you shouldn't be reading each of the words that you get. It's better if you practice skimming, which means trying to get the main ideas from the reading. Even when you read in your native language, you're probably not paying attention to every single word, but trying to get the main idea, and that is what you need to do also for the reading part. After you have skimmed the passage, it's a good idea to read it again and try to write down the main ideas, major points, and important facts. This, of course, is in preparation for the test. While you are doing the test, you will most likely not have time to be taking organized notes. But in order for you to start practicing identifying major points and ideas, this could be something that can help you. Same when you are practicing for the vocabulary, try to choose some unfamiliar words and guess their context or their meaning by the context, and select pronouns and practice reference. That's one of the questions that you get in the TOEFL test. So they highlight a pronoun for you, for example, it, and they ask you what does it refer to, and you have to go back and see the context of the text in order to answer those questions. So practicing with that would also be a good idea. And also practice making inferences like the one that we just did, trying to take conclusions out of the sentences that you are reading, and also from the passage as a whole. For the third type of question, because it's the summary question, we are not going to take a look at it because that one needs to have an understanding of the whole text. But some tips that I can give you for that part is for you to identify the passage type to see what the passage is doing. If they are just giving you a description, an explanation, if it's showing some comparison and contrast, that is going to help you to start thinking about what kinds of main ideas you are going to find in the prose summary chart. For example, if you get a text where they are clearly comparing and contrasting, most likely the main ideas that you are going to have to select are points of comparison or points of contrast, right? So having an understanding of the purpose of the text is going to help you with the summary chart. Again, in preparation for the test, something that can help you is to do the following. Create an outline of the main ideas to start distinguishing between the major and the minor points or the details of the text. If the passage categorizes information for the other type of question that I was telling you about, it's a good idea to create charts and place information in the appropriate categories. So for example, if you get a text where they are describing two dinosaurs, what are the characteristics of each of the dinosaurs, and making summary charts or categories in those can help you in order to understand the text. Also, if they are explaining the steps in a process, it would be a good idea for you to practice also making an outline, an organized outline in order for you to summarize those. Using charts and outlines is definitely a good idea here, and also paraphrasing individual sentences, and then paraphrasing the whole paragraph. That last one is going to be especially helpful when you get to the writing and the speaking part of the test, right, for the integrated tests. But yeah, that's basically something that you would need to keep in mind for these types of questions that come at the end. Again, from this type of question, you only get 1, but it is worth 2 points. So you need to try to practice with that as much as possible. All right, so let me show you my sources and my contact information. If you guys have any questions, this is the moment for you to write them on the chat box. Let me go over and see if I had any. Can I recommend a link in order to practice? If you send me an email, I will be more than happy to share some material that I have. I can even send you sample of texts and questions. So just send me an email and I'll be more than happy to show you or send to you some material. Any other questions that you might have? This is the moment to ask them. Let's give some time. The best advice that I can give you is for you to read. I know that it might not be the most entertaining skill to practice, but the more you read, the faster you will be, the more vocabulary you will gain. And for some people, and this is an advice in general, the more you practice different strategies, the better. For some people, it works to take notes because they get distracted when they are reading and they lose focus. So if you are one of those people, some people I have seen, they are writing keywords, not just to organize themselves while they are taking the test, but in order not to get confused and fall asleep or bored and fall asleep. So those are things that you can definitely keep in mind for when you guys are taking the test. How much time do you think that we need to be ready to do the TOEFL exam? That's going to depend a lot on you. What I always advise my students is to not take it until you are ready. The test is not cheap. It's going to vary depending on the country that you are in, but it tends to be not the cheapest thing in the world. So don't take it unless you really feel ready to take it. But it is going to depend on you. Something that I can definitely tell you is that you should not feel bad if you're not doing really well in one section. Like I said, the sections are scored separately. So you get 30, 30, 30, 30. If they are asking you for 80 or more, it is normal that, for example, your reading is kind of low and your listening is really high. That is the most common thing that I have seen with my students, that they have a tendency to not do really well on the reading. But if that is your case, make sure that you practice your listening really well to make sure that you score higher on those. So it's kind of a leveling act. One of your skills is always going to be a little lower than the other one, and that is specifically, or that is normal. That's very, very normal. How different is the writing section in a TOEFL and TOEIC exam? They're pretty different. All of the parts, really. I would say that the most or the biggest difference that they have is the vocabulary. In TOEIC, if you ask me, the vocabulary tends to be a little more simple. It's something that you would listen to every day. However, in the TOEFL, the challenge is the vocabulary, not just to understand it, but to be able to use it in writing or speaking. In writing, the writing section, just to give you an idea, in the TOEFL, you get 2 essays, so both of them are essays. From the TOEIC, I've seen that you can get like letters and things like those, because the purpose of the TOEIC is for you to prove your skills in the workplace. And in the TOEFL is for you to be able to write essays and academic assignments. And so for the TOEFL, for example, the integrated task is going to ask you to get 2 texts and, you get a text and a listening about an academic topic, for example, about the history of candles, like what we saw there, and you get different theories in the lecture and different theories in the reading, and then you kind of have to join that information together and write an essay about it. And in the essay, same thing, right? You have to write an essay with introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, very academic, and they take a look, a very close look to your vocabulary, your academic vocabulary. So they're pretty different. Which kind of textbooks help us to get more vocabulary? Textbooks, that's a hard question. What I would advise, in order for you to get a little bit more vocabulary from reading, is to look for academic journals. Off the top of my head, I can't right now think of any academic journals, but if you just Google academic journals from science, from mathematics, you can start getting some articles, and that can start enriching your vocabulary. Even reading certain newspapers in English, that can also help you increase your vocabulary. What's the hardest part on the speaking test? For me personally, and that is my lowest skill, the last time I took the test, that was the one that I scored a little lower than the other ones. The hardest part on the speaking test for me personally is distributing the time. And that because you get either 15 seconds or 30 seconds to prepare your answer. So you have to be able to be quick and think on your feet. So it's kind of, for me, that's the hardest part, to organize my thoughts enough in 30 seconds or 15 seconds in order to provide a response. But again, it's like a conversation. No, okay. So very quickly, and actually we are thinking of preparing one writing workshop and one speaking workshop, similar to the ones that we've had with this. So please be aware of our social media for when we schedule those. But to answer your question, it is not like a conversation. They ask you a question. Like I said, there are 4 tasks. In the first question, it's the independent, and they do ask you for a very specific question, like describe something, right? Or if you had to choose between this and this, which one would you choose? And the other 4, you get an audio, and you have to talk about that, or you get a reading and an audio, and a reading and an audio, and you have to talk about what you heard and listened to. So it is not a conversation. It is like you are summarizing things that you have heard, or just answering to a question. But like I said, we are going to see if we can schedule writing and speaking workshop for you guys. So please be on the lookout for those on Facebook or Instagram. You can follow us as Education USA El Salvador. And if you are from the region, the Central American region, we are also going to share those with our other advisors in Central America and the Caribbean. So please be on the lookout for those. Thank you very much for attending our workshops. If you were here yesterday and today, or just today, we are going to be uploading this one to YouTube. So we will share that as well with you guys. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Have a wonderful day.